Yes, that's right.
Yeah, good. And then Julia over on the left here, she's one of our team of happy people. She is living here in Poole in England, but she's moving to Germany shortly, so she'll become our German ambassador. Many other people, we've got ambassadors from different countries, so it's beginning to grow. I see we've got Desiree's just arrived. Now, Desiree,
she's in Machu Picchu by the look of it.
Desiree,
I reckon that's where that is.
I think representing Vienna, I think. I can't remember now. She'll tell us.
She's in Italy, yeah.
Italy, right, yes. That's it. And then who we got there just signed in? I can't see Lydia.
Yes.
Yes,
hello.
Welcome. You're and Shashank. You were on early, Shashank. I remember seeing you. Do you want to unmute your microphone so you can say hi?
Hi, everyone.
Good. Yeah. So where are you calling in from, Shashank?
Delhi, India.
Oh, brilliant. That's amazing, isn't it? We've got Michael Hancock on a station in Dorset somewhere. See Michael.
Hi.
Yeah. And
what time is it in India? In India, it must be about midnight or something.
Yes, it is. It is actually about 11:30 p.m.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, we've got great spread because Julia is in Vancouver, so she's 11 o'clock in the morning in Vancouver, and you're 11 o'clock at night in India, I guess.
Yeah, we are truly global, aren't we? It's great.
We have all the time zones covered, I'm sure.
Yeah. I'm just asking Lydia, where are you dialing in from, Lydia?
Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and it's 8 o'clock.
Yeah, great.
It's 8 o'clock here.
Uh-huh. Good. And Stan's just arrived. Hello, Stan. Stan's
hi, Jerry. Yeah.
Right down in Brighton, I guess, are you?
I'm actually in a small village outside Haywards Heath called Linfield.
Oh, right. Yeah, down in the
lovely village.
Yeah. Welcome there. I'm just saying hi,
Gary.
Gavin. Where are you dialing in from, Gavin?
I'm in Stroud.
Oh yes, from the People Consultants. Is that right? No.
Peter told me about this. Yes.
Right, yes. Because Peter and Pam Keevil are launching Happy Cafes, I think, and they're going to come talk to us another meeting about the COVID, the book they've written about COVID and happiness. So on. Good.
Yeah, very impressive.
I think Rachel Moore is just signing in, so I'll say hi to Rachel. And Jane Pardo. Jane, I recognise your name. Where are you dialing in from, Jane?
Weymouth, Dorset.
Oh, right. You're quite close by. And then I'd just like to quickly welcome Rachel, who's appeared in the corner here. You'll have to unmute yourself, Rachel, so you can say hi. Can you do that? That's it. Yes, so welcome. Rachel's our third guest tonight. She's a professional singer. I'll talk more about Rachel in a moment. But we're just introducing ourselves and finding out where everybody is. And for those that are just joining us now, we've got contributors from India, from Vancouver, from Paris, Germany, and somewhere else. I can't remember. Shashank, or it was in India, yes.
Rotterdam.
Yes.
Rotterdam, that's it. Yeah.
Delhi.
Yeah. Delhi, brilliant. And Sylvia's iPad. Now, hello, Sylvia. Do I recognize? What's your surname, Sylvia?
Dear.
Dear. And where are you dialing in from?
Bournemouth.
Oh, right. Excellent. Well, you're
exotic Bournemouth.
Definitely.
Okay. Well, look, it is normal for us to start on time, and I see it's just after 7, so I think I'll get going. First of all, I'd like to welcome you all. I'm actually thrilled tonight. We've got a huge spread of locations. We've already met Shashank, who's over in India, Julia Kim, who's in Bhutan. That's a first. And then we've got although Julia's actually in Vancouver, that's what I was going to say. She's actually calling in from Vancouver. So we've got this wonderful spread across the whole globe, I think. All we're lacking is some people from Australia and South America at the moment. Anyway, it's my proud to welcome you all, and thanks for coming to this meeting. And I'd particularly like to welcome Julia Kim, who, as you probably know if you've read the script so far, is the director of the Gross National Happiness project in Bhutan, and she's going to be talking about the inner and outer sides of happiness. And then we have Lesley Lyle, who's a positive psychologist. She's a friend of Chris and I, and came with us and Julie to Miami last year, attended a conference, and she's going to be talking about VIA. Now, I have no idea what VIA is about, but I know it's something to do with psychology, positive psychology, so we look forward to her talking later on. And then I'd just like to welcome Rachel Moore, who's a local singer. As I said, she's a professional singer, sings in jazz bands and hotels for soirees, but she's also a voice coach. And she's going to talk to us about the power of singing and how it can increase your happiness and well-being by taking up some new ideas. It's one of the 10 keys to happier living, being creative, try something new. And I think Rachel has got some interesting things to run past us. So I will now hand over to Chris. Chris Croft is our MC, and we'll be hearing from Julia Seibold a little later on. Just finally, welcome to Stuart. I see Stuart has arrived, and Paola, welcome to both of you. So over to Chris to run the meeting. Thank you.
Yes, it's my job to try to get it all through on time, just to steamroller you all along, because we've got 3 speakers. We could be here all evening. It would be fascinating, but I'll just try and keep it moving along, really. Someone's got to. But before we get to the 3 speakers, Julia, Lesley and Rachel, we're just going to hand over to the other Julia Seibold, and you're going to talk to us. Well, we're going to do a little bit of a meditation first, aren't we? We're going to calmly move into the moment, and then we're going to have a look at the calendar. I believe that's the plan.
Yes.
And then we'll have the 3 speakers. So over to you, Julia, from Germany.
Hello, everyone. A warm welcome from me as well. It's so wonderful to connect with so many lovely people, different time zones, still connected. How wonderful. So I want to honor you for being here, for taking the time for yourself to connect and to choose happiness, because that's the overall arching theme. Now, with this mini moment of just purely coming to this place wherever you are sitting, it's just wonderful to concentrate on yourself for a moment, rather than looking at a screen, scrolling through, checking how everyone is sitting, what's going on, where are their names and all of that. So we are taking a moment to just sit with ourselves. Now that is always important, as you know, to just look inwardly and to calm our nervous system. And so for today, I thought I had a moment today where, you know, like I'm moving soon, and there were so many things happening that sometimes I just sit and breathe and want to hear like some kind of guidance. And I don't know about you, but I kind of want to go, so what shall I do now? And I'm asking more or less for intuition to help me. And I'm sure we all have our different experiences with that. But I learned a wonderful exercise, which I'd like to do with you as a form of meditation for us to drop deeper, to increase our level of intuition. And so it's very simple, and I love it because it's so simple. So here we go. It would be, I explain it first to you, what you need to do in order to increase your intuition skills. We want to basically get out of our head because we're overthinking stuff. And then with a breath, take us deeper. And with the last part of that exercise, we breathe deeply out with a sigh. And that brings us right there where we can actually begin to listen to guidance. And when we practice that more, it just feels good. It just feels good and you can get guidance. So what we first do is every one of you look around in your vicinity and just for yourself, because you're all muted, I guess, say out loud 3 items you can just see around you. Just name them. Pen, keyboard,
Flowers,
notebook.
picture of Marilyn Monroe, and a Buddha.
And Buddha for me as well.
Good, I heard that. Wonderful. So that's the first part. So you want to name stuff which is around you, which brings you out of your head into the real world right here, right now. First part, name 3 things around you. Second, you want to breathe 2 times, in and out as if you blow out candles. So let's do this together 2 times. 1 in and out, blow out candles. And again, breathe in. And blow out all those candles in front of you. And now the third step, and I'm actually closing my eyes for that. You want to breathe in, and as you breathe out, you're sliding down the slide. You're gliding down a slide. Imagine that. So breathe in, and with a sigh, slide down the slide. Drop deeper with that sigh. Stay there for a moment. Don't do anything. Listen. Okay, probably then you want to breathe again if you just breath out for that. This mini moment, I kid you not, is magical. I can point it out again if you want. So name 3 things, then breathe out twice, blow out candles, then slide down the slide with an out breath. You'll find answers at the end of that. And I would be really curious of you telling us, if you practice this a few times a day or every day, what guidance you listen and what guidance you hear when you ask a question afterwards, or whatever it is you get insights afterward. All right. So this was a bit of a different approach to meditation. I wanted to give you some extra tools here. I hope you like that. And so intuition is that guidance system where we can pick up frequencies from around us. And so it's super, super powerful that we humans have this as a superpower. And why not practice it and use it? So, oh, Sally, you're saying that you love it. That's good. Thank you. And I'm guessing as you're with a baby, breathing and tuning in is super present for you. So I'm glad you liked it. All right, so let's just talk about this wonderful thing we have every month forwarded, presented by Action for Happiness. It's the calendar. If you've not seen that calendar before, you want to check it out on their webpage or on the app and be reminded daily of their wonderful, excellent notifications so that you have a daily hint of what to do. This month is called Optimistic October. Woo! So Optimistic October. I'm glad we arrived in October because I truly love that topic. Now, I don't know about you. What jumps into your mind when you hear optimistic? You know, maybe you say, well, good, I'm an optimist. Or maybe you just instantly think about the opposite and think about all the pessimists around you. Well, I invite you to look into this monthly calendar with an open heart and take those daily actions, because if you are only slightly a pessimist, those daily activities will just charge you and boost you to be more of the optimist. Now, just very briefly, there are 3 main things I want to point out what an optimist really is. So, number 1, in general, an optimist chooses to look for the good in a situation. That's probably an overall topic for an optimist. Second, they don't take things personal, right? So it's just like, it's fine, things happen. It's not them who is the problem. And they find that easier to go through difficult situations as an optimist, and they move on. As simple as that. They don't attach too much to stuff and don't take it personal. Third, mistakes happen, but they can isolate the mistakes. They don't generalize them and think this is an overall thing which is happening all the time to them. So they isolate the mistakes and they look for the lessons in them. And that is great attitudes of an optimist. So I encourage you to take a look at the calendar. Today, on Thursday, the first hour activity here pointed out would be write down your most important goals for this month. Right, if you haven't done this yet, depending on your time zone, you might want to get a pen and paper ready and write your goals down. So I think Chris is sharing the screen. Thank you very much, Chris. And so it's super colorful, very inviting. and let yourself be inspired by that. All right, over to you, Chris. Thank you for your likes, for your thumbs up there in between.
Right, thanks, Julia. Yeah, so there's the calendar. Remember, you can always look at it anytime if you want to see the calendar. You just go to Action for Happiness. Just Google Action for Happiness calendar, and there it is. And it's, as always, it's got some great things, hasn't it? Things like write down 3 specific things that have gone well recently. You know, that's something we can just find 3, can't we, in the middle of everything else. I particularly like actually the one on the 3rd of the month. Take the first step towards a goal that really matters. And happiness comes from moving towards a goal. So it's a really good idea to have some sort of plan of something big that you want to do. Always have something you're looking forward to, and always have something that you're working on. Julia's looking forward to going back to Germany. I don't know why, but but she is. It's a goal. So yeah, that's the calendar. Now, the next thing that we always do is we always just share some things that have made us happy recently. So let's go back to doing that. I think we'll just do it quite briefly. In the comments, could you just put 1 or 2 things that have made you happy since we last met? Just anything at all that's been a source of happiness, and let's see what kind of things we've got. I'll just pick a couple as they come out. I'm going to put being a granddad. It's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine she's become a grandmother recently. And I'm not talking about my wife, Sally, by the way, this is somebody else. She's become a grandmother recently. And she said, oh, it's made me feel really old. It's made me realize how old I am. And I just thought, what an attitude that is, you know? Because I know I'm not any older just because my daughter's had a baby. I just think it's great. All the fun of a baby without any of the work. But isn't that just a classic example of mindset? Anyway, see what we've got. Having a nice talk over the phone with my 96-year-old grandma. That's a brilliant one from Toshiko. Mushrooms. Lesley, are you picking them and eating them, or are you? You are allowed.
No, they're in the forest. You mustn't pick them.
You're just
look
admiring their beauty.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm on a Facebook group called Mushroom Foraging, and people put comments like, is this one poisonous? And they're putting pictures of these red ones with the white dots on the top, and you're thinking, yes, you know, if you have to ask whether that's poisonous, don't ever think of eating a mushroom. You know, what are you doing? Should I eat this? They go. So yeah, just admire, take pictures of them. Yeah. So, oh, we've made Julia happy as well by being the happiness ripple. Yeah. And that's an interesting one, is you can't pour from an empty cup, and, you know, it's not selfish to be happy because you can pass it on to other people. Sylvia's been down to the beach. Yeah, actually today was a really nice day. It was probably quite nice on the beach today. I'm jealous of that one. Vegan breakfast at Boscanova Boscombe, says Michael. Yeah, not quite as good as bacon and eggs, is it? But nearly. Yeah, hair behaving, Sylvia's put. It's a good day when your hair behaves. Yeah. Clearing out the house of a deceased father. That's an interesting one that made you happy. I suppose you discovered some memories. Perhaps that was an interesting window into your father a bit. Definitely having a clear out. That is enjoy. I always avoid it, but when I actually do have a clear out and throw stuff away, it feels good, doesn't it? You can get happiness just throwing stuff away. Yeah, decluttering. The joy of, what's the Marie Kondo book called? The joy of tidying up. Can anybody remember? What's the exact title? Can anybody remember the Marie Kondo book? The saxophone organ. Wow, I'd love to hear that. That would be incredible. I'm just going to Google Marie Kondo. I've got to know. I've got to know what her...
Chris, can I just prompt you there? Paola said, could she tell us a little about what makes Austrians happy? It was something she wanted to do last week. So sometime in your script today, if we give her a couple of minutes to talk about what makes Austrians happy.
Yeah, I think do it now. Paola's finished reading 3 books as well, which is fantastic.
Yeah,
Good grief.
that's a good one. Do you hear me well?
You're very, very quiet, Paola, for some reason.
Can you hear me?
Just.
You
Okay,
can, certainly.
good.
Just
So
briefly, yeah.
I have the list here. So in no corona times, what makes Austrian happy? When they win in winter sports, even more if they win against Germany.
Yeah, winning against
That's a bit
Germany.
controversial.
Yeah.
Not a flicker on Julia's face, just not a flicker when Paola said that. Yeah.
Ski holidays and the après-ski. Après-ski is when it's like after skiing they go for drinks and food and there is music and
Yeah, Glühwein. It's Glühwein,
yeah,
isn't it?
exactly.
We'll have to have an après Zoom session, I can see.
Well, normal times. Trekking, going to the mountains. The name for that in German is Wanderung.
All right.
Does that mean wandering? Is that what?
No, Wanderung. Wandern is like walking, and it lasts several hours. So when you go to the mountains, they walk sometimes even the whole day. They love making jam.
Oh, you've got louder, by the way. Whatever you did, that's what you need to know for next time. Now you're lovely and loud. Making jam.
Making jam. They love that.
What sort of jam? What sort of fruit do you use?
Oh, they love a lot apricots, marillen.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the
Apricots,
typical strawberries.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Gardening.
Gardening.
When spring starts, they go in mass to visit the garden shops to buy flowers and vegetables to grow their own food. Going to the coffee houses and spend hours there with friends or reading the displayed newspapers and magazines they have for free. The concept of coffee house is completely different to Starbucks here. You stay for hours. Nobody asks you to leave or if you want a second cup of coffee.
Ideal for happy cafes.
Low coffee. Going to the Heurigen is an establishment with a garden next to the wine gardens where they can try the wines of the house and eat typical Austrian food.
Oh, we could do some of that here in Dorset, I think.
That's something very typical, yeah. Austrian traditions like folk music and wearing traditional clothes very proudly. The name for this type of clothes is Trachten. Is the typical lederhose and the dindel for the ladies. As a country without sea, going to places like Italy and Croatia in summertime to eat seafood and fish and swim every day. They love the sea and that makes them really happy.
Good.
And the last one is the ball season. In Vienna, there are over 400 balls happening every winter. There are dress codes and opening fanfare, the debutant's arrival, and the exclamation Alles Walzer. You can also look forward to the so-called midnight performance, often a quadrille and a small gift to every visitor when entering the hall. That's very, very formal. And you have the balls of the doctors, the florists, the public servants, and for the different regions, this is a topic, is a motto for each ball. The chocolatiers. Yeah.
It's a great list. Thank you, Paola. That's a wonderful list. And I was listening to those and I was thinking, are they really different to us in our country? And a lot of those things we would agree with, like making jam and, gardening and things, but there were a few more unusual ones in there, weren't there? Like dressing up in lederhose, and we draw the line at that in this country.
Like that. That's formal. Even some people get married in these typical clothes.
Yeah. My mum's from Norway and they love to dress up in their traditional bunad, which is their sort of red and white sort of outfit. But I don't think we really have anything like that in England, which is a bit sad, really. I mean, we have Morris dancers, but
don't tell me about Morris dancers.
No, but we don't really have like a traditional costume that we dress up in, do we? Like suit and a bowler hat or something. So I think that's rather good that they have that. I like it.
Every region has different ones.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of
there is a region, the ladies have a gold hat, very, very old style, and the colors are different, the designs are different. dependent of the region, dependent of the valley. Even some valleys have their own one.
Yes. And they're all proud to be from a particular valley, and they've got the
Oh
root
yeah,
and all
they
that,
have
which,
their accent and
yeah,
language more or less.
which
Yeah,
is another one we don't,
dialect.
we don't particularly have. You're not that proud to be from Basingstoke or somewhere, are you, in England? It's not quite the same. But dancing, I'm glad you had dancing on there, because that's definitely a source of happiness, isn't it? It's always a winner. And even with the lockdown, we were in a Facebook group where everybody just danced in their kitchens over Zoom. So you could see everybody all just dancing away in their kitchens. Some people had flashing lights in their kitchens and things like that. And I did actually buy a flashing light for £5 from Amazon and have it in my kitchen. And it transformed, and it almost felt like you were in a nightclub with all these people, even though it was only you. So yeah, dancing is good for the soul, no doubt about it. Yeah, so thank you, Paola. That's a great list. That's great. So now it's time for us to move on to Julia Kim. So if you can unmute, and I'm just going to try to pin the video. I don't know how I do that. Oh yeah. So we are really honored to have Julia, because although she's currently in Vancouver, she's from Bhutan. And I don't know whether many of you know that Bhutan is the happiest country in the world. It's been measured. And they are the happiest country in the world. And they don't measure gross national product like we do, which is money. They measure gross national happiness, and they really do measure it. And I don't think it's coincidental they don't have TV in Bhutan, and they're also quite difficult to visit. They're a limited number of tourists as well, tramping over their beautiful country. So I think we're hopefully going to find out what the components are that make Bhutan such a happy place. And Julia Kim is from the Gross National Happiness Center. And in fact, I think you're the big boss of it, aren't you, Julia? I think you're
I'm the program director. There is a director as well, but we see each other as colleagues rather than a hierarchy.
You don't have a hierarchy in Bhutan. So, so you're organizing pretty much the Gross National Happiness Center. And we are honored to have you in our little group. And so tell us more about it for as long as you like. I mean, we're probably aiming for 10, 15 minutes with some questions afterwards, but however long it needs, we want to hear all about Bhutan and how you do it. Go for it, Julia.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you, Jerry, also for inviting me. I'm delighted to see there is this happy cafe that's bubbling along in these difficult times. I'd like to share a few slides, and I wanted to give you a heads up also that unfortunately I'll have to jump off on the hour to join another Zoom meeting, but I will definitely stay for the next half hour.
Brilliant.
So
we won't take it personally when you go. That's great.
Thank you.
So you should be able to share your screen okay, but let me know if it doesn't work. And I'll just panic at this end and try to work out what to do.
Are you able to see the slides all right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think it's kind of a little ironic to say that I'm going to start by talking about this moment of crisis that we're in, which one might say has been one of our big challenges to happiness and well-being as a global community. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, as Jerry mentioned, the inner and outer conditions of happiness. And as somebody who's worked at the United Nations and in different countries around the world, I'm very much attuned to what's happening at a systems level. In the environment in our countries that shapes the bigger picture of what makes people happy, as well as what are the inner dimensions that we as individual human beings can cultivate in order to be well and happy. So I always like to speak to both of those. So just to say a little bit about this moment that we're in, it's definitely not a single crisis. I mean, you can see from the images I chose to put up here, we're seeing climate change crises happening around the world. Just a little south of where I am now, the west coast of the United States, as people have been falling, it's been going up in flames. I can see smoke coming past my window now, all the way up in Vancouver. We've also seen the financial crisis as a result of the COVID pandemic. And in the middle of that, the Black Lives Matter movement also catching fire, literally. So they're multiple and they're interdependent. They're not just happening one at a time. I think it's also fair to say it's not just a single moment that we're in. If we've been paying attention, I think the warning signs for all of these crises have been building up for some time. And as much as we're rushing to try to find solutions, vaccines, etc., the impacts will be long-lasting. And then to say also that it's, I don't know about others, but for me, it's difficult to take in. These things are deeply personal. They're affecting me on an individual level, and yet they're clearly embedded in the larger systems that we live in. And that can sometimes be accompanied by a feeling of helplessness. So this moment of crisis is complex. So I find it helpful in these situations to look at a kind of framework for thinking about these crises, which others have referred to as an iceberg model. So as most of you are familiar, the iceberg that we see is often, only a third of it is actually visible above the water surface. And that's the events that are happening, the symptoms, the headlines that are grabbing our attention. But underneath that, what is driving those situations? And those who work in systems thinking will often refer to patterns of behavior, trends over time that have led to those events. And if you look even further below the surface, there are structures and systems that have been set up in our society, in our economy, that then drive those behaviors. But if you're curious to say, where do those systems come from? Well, they come from us, from our mental models as human beings. And those are driven by the values and the assumptions and the beliefs that shape the systems that we create. So what appears above the surface captures our attention, but what lies below often goes unnoticed and unchallenged. And the importance of our mental models in thinking about what we create. So before I talk about gross national happiness and Bhutan, I want to talk a little bit about our economic system and what is really a GDP-based mental model of our economy. And GDP, for those who aren't familiar, it's the sum of goods and services produced in society. It's reported all the time by politicians and governments. It's used to rank countries in terms of their status in the United Nations system. So what are some of the assumptions of this GDP mental model? Well, one is it's got a quite narrow economic definition of human behavior, Homo economicus. Although the cartoon on the right is a little bit funny, it really is portraying that human beings are narrowly self-interested and we use our reasoning basically to maximize utility and profit. We're constantly doing this inner calculation to maximize our own gains. So to question whether that is actually a reflection of human beings. It's another assumption is consuming goods and services is the best way, the primary way to increase happiness and well-being in a society. And given that, GDP is a good indicator of a country's success and well-being. And following that, unlimited GDP growth on a planet with finite resources is possible. So that's the assumptions that come from this GDP mental model. And if some of you are hearing this for the first time, I wouldn't be surprised because it's so pervasive in our system. It's kind of like the air we breathe. You don't really notice it until you start to look around and ask questions. So the story of gross national happiness begins with a visionary king who had a very different mental model of how things should be in the country. And this was the fourth king of Bhutan when he was asked by a reporter in the 1970s, what is the gross national product of Bhutan? Instead of giving a number, this very wise young king said, in Bhutan, gross national happiness is more important than gross national product. So coining the phrase gross national happiness and also sending a message that as the country would develop, he would want to be making decisions that were not just about growing the GDP economy as fast as possible, but really looking at how do we maximize well-being for the people and the country. It's interesting that around the same time, some of you may recognize this face. This is Robert Kennedy, brother of John F. Kennedy, who was on the campaign trail around the same time in 1968 and gave a very famous speech, which you can find on the internet at the University of Kansas, where he says that gross national product measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. So I won't have time to go into it, but if you Google that speech, very much worth seeing. And so interesting that these two charismatic and visionary leaders were both saying the same thing at around the same time. So some recent publications, if people are interested, that there's been a growing critique of GDP as a measure of how countries are doing. And it begs the question, well, why did we get obsessed with this number? How did it become so prominent? Why is it that politicians feel compelled to constantly reassure us that GDP is growing, GDP is growing? Well, in the 1940s, the formula was adopted by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, basically to help predict fluctuations in economic growth. Coming out of the Great Depression, it certainly made sense. But Simon Kuznets, who was the engineer of GDP, didn't actually intend it to be used as a reflection of how a country's doing, its success or progress. And there's more and more understanding that it's a problematic number, primarily for three reasons: what it counts, what it fails to count, and what it hides. So what it counts is basically only marketed economic activity, and all of that is counted positive, even if it leads to bad outcomes for our health and well-being. So if we were to cut down all the trees in the UK's beautiful forests or in Bhutan's forests, that would increase GDP. If crime is increasing and you need gated communities and security teams and prisons, then GDP goes up, even though quality of life is clearly going down. What it fails to count is interesting. A lot of the activities that enhance our happiness and well-being, but don't involve monetary transactions. So unpaid childcare, time with family and friends, a walk on the beach, as somebody mentioned this morning. Those things that we know lead to our happiness and well-being are not monetized and counted, and those don't contribute to GDP growth. They're basically ignored. And maybe most disturbing is what it hides, which is that GDP, when it's reported, can be getting bigger and bigger, but at the cost of uneven growth and rising inequalities, leading to some of the social crises that we're seeing happening in our countries at the moment. So just to put up one slide with one example of a country that is known for its GDP growth, the United States. If you look at the bottom graph, the horizontal line, that's GDP per capita between 1972 and 2016, and you'll see in the blue line that it's going up. But if you look at reported happiness by Americans over that same time period, you'll see that the line is pretty much flat, in fact, starting to decline. So above a certain level of development and GDP growth, we all agree it's important for security, for resources, housing, jobs, and so on. But beyond that basic level, increases in GDP does not translate into greater happiness, particularly in wealthy countries. So what counts more? This is from the World Happiness Report. Some of the things I mentioned earlier: community trust, so living in places where you know your neighbors, where you have a group like the Happy Cafe that you can check in with and feel like you're heard. Good governance, that's a big one in many countries right now, where you feel that the leaders are responsible and ethical and have the interests of the people at heart, where people are voting. Meaningful and secure work, this one's come up in a big way during the COVID pandemic. Not just a job where you will be laid off very quickly, but it's count on it. And increasingly work-life balance. In many developed countries, we're running out of time. We're run off our feet, chasing that GDP growth. So a lot of people ask, how is happiness defined in GNH? Is it just a mood or a feeling? Because that doesn't seem like a very stable way to measure a country's progress. Contrary to what many people think, the Bhutanese are not just happy all the time. They're not always smiling and in a good mood. They have their ups and downs like everybody else. So what do we mean when we say gross national happiness? And this is a wonderful quote from the first Prime Minister of Bhutan, who brought the idea of GNH to the United Nations in 2012. And he said that true abiding happiness cannot exist while others suffer, and comes only from serving others, living in harmony with nature, realizing our innate wisdom and the true and brilliant nature of our own mind. So quite a profound definition that really places happiness in being an interconnected idea. It's not me and my personal happiness. It's how am I relating to others? And the idea that when we're connected to others, when we have a sense of meaning and purpose and we're helping others, it contributes to our own happiness as well as others. When we're living in balance and harmony with nature, it also contributes to our well-being. And we have the potential to realize our highest wisdom, our highest potential as human beings. That's also part of the definition of happiness. So how do you put this into operation in a country? And there are many different ways that you could think about doing it. Bhutan actually looks at measuring 9 domains that they think are important for well-being and happiness. And it includes 3 of them that you see on the top right, which are in most surveys and development surveys in countries. Living standards, clearly important, education and health. But beyond those 3, there's some very important and unusual ones. They measure the environment because that's so important to our happiness and well-being. Again, thinking about this systems view. The vitality of our communities, recognizing the social cohesion I mentioned earlier. Time use, vital to know about. Psychological well-being. Good governance, which I mentioned earlier, is critical. Cultural diversity and resilience. To what extent is the culture flourishing? We were talking earlier about traditional foods, traditional music, costumes. Is there a sense of that thriving? Is there a tolerance of diversity? Those are also part of making an enabling environment for happiness. So again, contrasting it with our GDP mental model, it's not just about limitless economic growth for its own sake. It's balancing both the tangible and intangible aspects of well-being. And the importance of many of them have been highlighted by COVID. So again, returning to what I said earlier, we really would say that gross national happiness is about balancing both the outer and inner conditions for well-being. So those 9 domains that I mentioned earlier, many of them are the outer conditions. How can a government create the outer conditions where we can thrive and be well? It's interesting that in terms of creating an enabling environment, researchers estimate that in life satisfaction surveys, about 60 to 70% of an individual's reported life satisfaction can be attributed to these larger environmental conditions. So that's an important aspect. And that leaves about 30 to 40%, which can be attributed to individual characteristics, which include our personality. But even though you might think our personalities are fixed, or perhaps we're stuck with certain conditions because of our DNA, it's very interesting that in the well-being research that we're finding that this is also amenable to change and to positive interventions. So well-being and resilience skills can be cultivated. I love the meditation that Julia led in the morning to sort of ground us, as we started. We know that cognitive therapy, mindfulness, different kinds of meditation and other influences can promote pro-social behavior at a collective level and increase our overall individual well-being. So again, we can intervene at the individual level as well as the environmental level. More on these well-being skills, and here are some references for people who are interested in the neuroscience of happiness. Neuroplasticity is a description of a finding that's received a lot of attention lately, that as we practice certain skills, whether it's playing a violin or meditating on compassion, when you put a person who's been practicing that for a long time, they can find on functional MRI scans that the neural pathways grow and develop, even in adults, as they practice that. So it's not fixed. Our brains have the ability to adapt and grow depending on what we're training them to do. And that's important for our ability to cope with stress and to have greater resilience. So ideally, these are things that we should be training in and hopefully training our kids in before a major crisis like COVID happens. And it helps us to sustain positive emotions and rebound from negative emotions. So again, someone was referring to that earlier about the extent that we make a mistake, and some people perseverate on it and blame themselves for that mistake and expand it into, I'm always like that. Why do I always do the thing? While others can sort of see the mistake and then rebound from it and say, okay, I'll do better next time. Note to self. So that can be trained. And enhancing compassion, altruism, our ability to help others, all of these support our physical, psychological, and social well-being. And I would really refer to some of the research by Richard Davidson, who is the head of the Center for Healthy Minds and has been leading a lot of this research. And he says that really we should be bringing this into education, health, and community-based interventions. And the same way that we think about going to the gym to stretch and exercise our bodies, we should be exercising our minds in the same way. So a bit more about how we bring these together in Bhutan, and also to outline some of the major players, the different organizations and leaders in this in Bhutan. So aligning vision with action is important, and we're fortunate in Bhutan to have had leadership that has really prioritized happiness and well-being. The 5th King of Bhutan has said G&H is development with values, not just development for its own sake. I mentioned the survey, which has the 9 domains, 33 different indicators, and the Center for Bhutan Studies and G&H Research is a research body that undertakes that survey, a very ambitious and important undertaking to get a sense of how the country is moving in terms of creating that environment for happiness. Measurements are not enough, as we all know, so the G&H Commission, which is like the planning commission in a government, uses a screening tool based on these 9 domains to guide policy making. So let's say there's a proposal to open a mining project in a rural community, not just looking at the impact on environment and on jobs, but what will be the impact on culture, on health, on communities. So those would be looked at by the G&H Commission. And then finally, our organization, which is a national non-governmental organization, the G&H Center, we're really about raising awareness and applying these G&H practices in leadership development, applying it to organizational levels like in business, working with schools and youth to really bring it to the grassroots level. So all those different levels are important. So what are some of the ways that you can see G&H being used and applied in Bhutan? Well, if you were to come to the country, one of the first things you would notice is the lack of billboard advertising. That they really let beauty and nature speak for itself. And just think for a moment how much we're bombarded by advertising and billboards and what that does to our state of mind. Many people speak of an attention economy that we're in, and all these different bodies are competing for our attention. What does that do to our sense of well-being? Bhutan's also really prioritized caring for people, and that's seen by the fact that they have universal free basic health and education. So really seeing that these are important for well-being. This current Prime Minister has made teachers and healthcare workers the highest paid civil servants in the country, again saying we think these things are important for well-being. They've committed in their constitution to keeping over 60% of the country under forest cover for all time. And this has resulted in Bhutan being the first and only carbon negative country in the world. They're actually sequestering more carbon emissions than they're putting out. As you mentioned in the introduction, the tourism policy in Bhutan, it's a hard country to get into, but for a reason. They're really trying to promote high-value, low-impact tourism. So balancing the income from tourism with the possible negative impacts on social and environmental outcomes. So really trying to make sure that those things are balanced in the country. Cultivating well-being skills, meditation and G&H values are really promoted in schools and in the education system. So all of these coming together to try and align policy and action. So you may be wondering, how could this happen in a country outside of Bhutan? Does it just need, enlightened leaders and a strong policy basis? Well, G&H and ways of measuring progress beyond GDP are now being adapted in different organizations and even communities. And that's a lot of the work that I've been leading with the G&H Center in Europe. We do programs. We've done programs in Schumacher College in the UK. We're doing one in Canada. We've got partnerships in Australia and the United States because people want to know, how do we adapt this to our own context? It involves really looking at well-being at personal, organizational, and the bigger systems level. We see transformative leadership as being very important in shifting our mindsets, whether that's business leadership, educational leadership, youth leadership, and really allowing people to prototype or try out different ways of adapting the values and metrics in their own community or organization. One large company that we've been working with in Thailand had been adapting the G&H measures and values into key performance indicators, employee engagement surveys, and draw broadly the business context in Thailand. So this is my last slide, just to say that, since I have been in Canada more because of the pandemic, it's allowed for a really exciting partnership with Windhorse Farm in Nova Scotia, which is the east coast of Canada. And next month, we're launching the first Right Livelihood and G&H program as a partnership between Canada and Bhutan. We've done it in the past with Schumacher College in the UK and Bhutan. Julie Richardson from the college is now also facilitating this program. David Suzuki Foundation, which is a large environmental organization in Canada, is also going to be co-facilitating with us. And the first module will be online to really get people acquainted with these ideas and thinking about how they can apply it in their own context. And then COVID travel allowing, we're hoping to bring people to Bhutan to have a good week-long immersion in Bhutan and G&H to experience it. And then again, if we are able to travel, bring people to Canada in order to see how First Nations, Aboriginal communities are looking at well-being and happiness, and different initiatives that are happening in Canada also to look at beyond GDP approaches. So I think I will close there, and maybe we can just open up for any questions or anything else that we want to do together.
Yeah, thank you so much, Julia. That was fascinating. You actually blew my mind on the very first slide when you said maybe all these problems are connected, and I hadn't even thought about that. And the fact that cutting down trees puts GDP up, and you haven't got any billboards, and Bhutan is just an extraordinary place. Fantastic. And what great work. And why isn't the rest of the human race following you? So yeah, thank you so much for that talk. Really amazing. I think we have got 2 more speakers, but I think we've maybe got time for maybe one question. If somebody wants to, Stan is immediately right in there. Stan, what would you like to ask Julia?
Yeah, but I've always regarded Bhutan as a sort of Shangri-La of today. And when I put this to my friends, some very left-wing friends, let it be said, they immediately come back and say, yes, that's all very well for those at the top of the pyramid, but what about those at the bottom? And of course, when I was looking at all the components of the Gross National Happiness Project, one thing that seemed to be missing, and that was more equality. So in other words, I'd like to ask him, how would you answer that kind of criticism that in fact it's gone too far in the direction of, if you like, the sort of psychological well-being, and is kind of neglecting the material part of well-being, particularly for those at the bottom?
Thanks so much for that question, Stan. It's a very thoughtful question. I would start by saying I didn't have time to go into the 4 pillars of gross national happiness. There are 9 domains, 4 pillars, and one of the pillars is equitable social and economic development. So that's very much a priority. This latest prime minister in Bhutan was pledged to reduce the gap. So the income and social inequalities, Bhutan is not a perfect country. The inequalities are actually smaller than other countries when you look at the Gini coefficient, but they're paying attention to it because there is a risk that it can increase. So there is that attention definitely to that. Prioritizing things like healthcare, universal healthcare and education is a really important way of making sure that you're trying to address inequalities. And I would say that many people think that Bhutan is about, let's just not grow the economy. Let's neglect the material standards and living standards. But if you recall, living standards is one of the 9 domains, as is health and education. So they are also seen as being important to balance. The last G&H survey, the survey is helpful because it allows you to compare men and women, different age groups, rural and urban communities. And then the goal isn't to make the most happy people in the survey even happier. The goal is to identify those who are struggling and then bring them up. So based on the last survey, they found that in general, women were less happy than men. As an occupational group, farmers were the least happy. For the first time, youth as an age group were reporting the lowest happiness. So that should trigger the government and other stakeholders to think, what should we do about that? So there are efforts now to do more rural infrastructure, making sure that information technology is going out to rural areas. There's more efforts to increase women's participation in government and in politics. And there's attempts to really try to increase youth participation and to try to tackle things like growing youth unemployment and increasing use of social media. So the way the survey is used, it should be used to identify inequalities in those domains and then guide policy. So I hope that addressed the question in some ways.
I think that's a great answer, yes. Equalities are all the way through those values you listed, aren't they? Even if they're not listed as a value on their own, it's because they're right through it all. Can I just ask one little question, which is social media? Do you have that? Do you have Facebook in Bhutan?
Yes, it has come in. So in the beginning, back in the 70s, you could have said, you know, there's no television. Now there's television plus. There's internet, there's Facebook. The kids who are able to afford smartphones will be on that, be using apps. And so, I mean, there's positives and negatives to any technology we can always acknowledge. But when I come back to North America, I have to say I'm often quite worried about what's happening, particularly for younger people in terms of addiction to screen time, bullying, and all those sorts of things, which are now beginning to be seen in Bhutan as well. So there are NGOs that are working on media and democracy, working with young people to help them learn how to deal with this influx of information and advertising in order to deal with it in a healthy way.
Yeah, maybe education's the answer rather than banning it. That's probably what you're doing, which is probably the right thing. Anyway, we have to go on because we've got two more speakers. Although, thank you so much, Julia. That was fascinating. Did we all love that talk? Really amazing. So thank you so much, Julia. I know you've got to go as well on the hour, but we're going to have 5 minutes of overlap with Lesley Lyle's talk. So I hope you enjoy the first 5 minutes of Lesley's talk. No pressure, Lesley, that you've got Julia sitting there. But actually, it's great to have Lesley doing this talk, and I'm really pleased we finally managed to get you to talk to us on this forum we've got here. So I've known you for ages, and we sort of first met walking our dogs, I think. I can't quite remember how we met.
Yeah. And that's a key to happiness.
Yeah, walking a dog is a key to happiness. Yeah. And Lesley's an expert in quite a few areas of happiness, actually. You know, things like positive aging, which I think I want to get you back to do a talk on positive aging, because I think that is really interesting about why we actually do get happier as we get older. Because it is true. I mean, look at Jerry, you know, incredibly old and incredibly happy.
I've got a new hip.
He's got his new hip, yeah. So, yeah, so Lesley knows about a lot of things, but you're just going to talk to us about VIA, which I think Jerry probably thought was VIA-GRA when it was first announced, but sorry, it had to be done. But it's something much more important and serious than that, isn't it? So I'm just going to hand over to you, Lesley, if I may, to talk to us a bit about VIA. I know that this is going to be totally different to the last talk, so it's going to be a great contrast. And what a good evening this is before we even get to Rachel Moore and singing. So Lesley, take it away.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me in the Happiness Cafe. It's very nice to be here. And as I'm thinking about Rachel and her singing, I'm wondering whether we can do something about VIA or something like that later. I thought I would talk to you about strengths. That's really what I'm talking to you about, because I think it's an area of positive psychology that's been really overlooked, certainly in the media. I'm quite sure that it's been mentioned before that positive psychology really studies what's going well with people who are flourishing and doing well in life, and it's very solution based, and rather than looking at what's going wrong, it's about what's going right. And really that's how Martin Seligman began the positive psychology movement when he was the president of the American Psychological Association, pointing out that for 100 years we studied what's wrong with people, and we have all these measures of depression and anxiety and neuroticism, but we'd failed to look at the habits and characteristics of people who were thriving and flourishing in life, to see what was it that they were doing different, what could we learn from them. And as a result of that and his partnership with Christopher Peterson, this was one of the first things that happened in positive psychology. This book, big tome of a book, arrived, and it's called Character Strengths and Virtues. And I think the philosophy behind it is basically, if we don't have words for things, we don't have a vocabulary for things, then we don't see them. We certainly can't measure them, but worse than that, we don't notice them. And so they and a team of researchers and psychologists came up with 24 character traits that they say, and I believe are universally recognized across all cultures and communities. And you will know all of them, all 24, you will recognize them. And of course, we all have them in different measures. And so what I will do as quickly as I can, because I know time's marching on, is just explain briefly why I think it's important for you to know what your strengths are and how to spot them in others. And I'll give you some links of how you can do a self-report questionnaire to find out if you're not aware of what your top strengths are. But I thought, just for a bit of a laugh, really, that before we talk about our strengths, we might share our weaknesses together. And having copied Chris's brilliant idea last month of having a word cloud, I've done the same, but one of my strengths, by the way, is not technology, but I will try and share my screen, and hopefully, is that on your screen? Can you see that?
It certainly is.
Oh, good, that works. So if you can quickly on your phone or on your laptop, go to menti, menti.com, and put the code in 7209971. I just put in your weaknesses. Now, while you're doing that, I will share with Chris that I haven't got the live thing up here. Can you share that on your screen?
This is all working just fine. I think you're fine.
Will we see it? Because I can't see it.
Let's see what happens. But if not, I can get it to do it for you in a moment.
Super.
What am I going to have? We can only have 5 weaknesses. Is that all?
Let's go with your favourite.
Yeah. Yes, so Lesley, I think if you click on present. Have you got present?
No, in Menti. No, I haven't got Menti up here.
But you
share it.
But you need to go to Mentimeter, don't you?
Yes. But I wondered whether it would be quicker for you to share.
I can't do it because it's your Mentimeter survey.
Oh, right. Okay. Right then. Sorry, everybody. Let me quickly go to it myself.
Oh, I see. Is that a PowerPoint slide you've got there then?
Yes. I didn't think about that. But can you see the cloud?
No, you have to go to Mentimeter and do it from there.
See that. So I need to come out. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
just mentimeter.com.
I just can't get to it at the moment because that is in the way. Right, hang on. I need a new thing.
Mentimeter.com.
Let me just stand up and do this.
I can't type standing up. I can only type sitting down.
Right.
So you go to mentimeter.com and then you just click on your presentations. There's like a blue box top right.
Can't see. I've got my glasses on. That really helps, isn't it?
Yeah, your presentations.
No, it's not coming up for me.
Mentimeter.com.
Oh, this is really not clever, and it's coming up with what the code. Right, maybe I'm going to open that because I will take too long to. I've
been able to open this with your code.
Pardon?
Yes, so we've all been able to vote, but we can't see the results, I think.
Right. I will find that maybe some people that aren't shy might want to share some of their.
Unless we can.
Let me just try again. Sorry.
Can we actually use that code to view it on our computer somewhere else then, do you suppose?
I don't know. I've never used this before. I just, well, anyway, while I'm trying to get into this, which is doing too well, the reason that I've asked you to do this is that most of us are, I was trying to multitask, I'm not a real woman, you see. Is it menti.com?
You need to go to mentimeter.com. Mentimeter.com. It actually is dead quick if you just do it. Mentimeter.com.
Yeah, I know, but I can't see where I sign in. That's
yeah, top right, it should be.
The code. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, top right of mentimeter.com, there's a blue box called Your Presentations.
I've seen that before, but I can't see it now. I don't know. Right, I'll just do it one more time. The thing is about our weaknesses is that most of us know them. And even if we don't, our loved ones, our neighbours, our friends, etc., are more than happy to tell us what they are.
Absolutely.
I'm going to stop the share now and see if I go back.
I'll tell you what we could do, by the way, Lesley. If you tell us,
I've got the results. I've managed to get them to email. I emailed to me. You can.
Oh, well done.
Can you share your screen then, Michael, and we can see them? Because the other option is that you could do it during Rachel's talk, and you could show us at the very end.
Oh, hang on.
Yeah.
Patience. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, that looked great.
Well done, Michael. I don't know how you managed to hack in, but
well, I couldn't possibly comment.
That's really great.
So there we are. We're distracted. We're impatient. What else? Oh,
forgetful. Quiet. Somebody's put quiet. Is that a weakness? Chocolate. I love that.
I spelled chocolate. Yeah.
Messy. Yeah. Quiet. So it's good to know that we share these in common with other people. But the thing is, although we are quite good at knowing what our weaknesses are, and we certainly know what the weaknesses of our partners are, don't we? Only 1 in 3 people can even mention 1 or 2 of their strengths. And why does that matter? Well, it matters because the research shows that when we use our strengths, it improves every part of our lives. It improves our relationships, our well-being, our happiness. It makes us more productive and happy at work. It improves our relationships with people. And you can, I'm going to have to try and share this again.
Have I stopped mine?
You can measure
yours again.
Sorry, now I've lost everybody.
That's all right. We're all still here.
Yeah, we
all
can
right,
see
well,
you.
you can hear me. I can't see any of you. Can you see this on the? Am I sharing this?
You're not sharing it yet.
Share screen.
Find. Hang on. Right, I found you. Right. If you go to BIA.org, I will once more try and share this with you. I'm really showing my weaknesses, aren't I? Which is, no, I can't find it. I'll share it afterwards. You can do a self-report test and it will tell you what your strengths are in a hierarchical list.
I started sharing the screen now.
Right, hang on then, I'll find the list and show you what they are. Yeah, I've got Sally there. Let me move you down, Sally. Sorry, was it Sally? Hi. So here are strengths. 24 of them, and I'm sure you'll recognise them all.
Prudent.
And you will have some. You will have some of these will be more predominant in your life, and some will be at the bottom of your list. But that doesn't mean they're weaknesses. It just means that they're things that you don't use as often as the ones at the top. They say that your top 5 are really your signature strengths, which really encapsulates your personality, and you should, in theory, recognise yourself from that. So another way of knowing what a strength is it's something that you do, something that you're good at, something that you enjoy doing, and something that makes you energized. So sometimes we're really good at things. We might be good at music or maths, but we don't enjoy doing them. So we would say, from a positive psychology perspective, that isn't a strength, that's a learned behavior that you happen to be really good at it. And when we concentrate on people's strengths, instead of their weaknesses, we can help build their self-esteem. I mean, if you use your strengths regularly, you will feel that you are more your authentic self. You'll have more meaning and purpose in your life. And there's other ways that we can use strengths. For instance, with your children, if your child comes home from school and tells you that they've done well in geography and history and maths, but they haven't done very well in another subject, there's a tendency sometimes to take the others for granted and concentrate on where they need to improve. But the thing is that sometimes if you concentrate on what you're not good at and try and improve, with a lot of effort and time, you become sort of average. But if you work with your strengths, then you become the very best of yourself in all sorts of different environments. And as I said before, we tend to tell our partners, don't we, their weaknesses. But have you ever shared what you value as their top strengths? What you really appreciate in them? I had an experience working with the Prince's Trust, helping young people who had been in long-term unemployment go through that terrible process of trying to get an interview, which in itself was almost impossible. And these young people had a very, very good sense of everything they were not good at and had very little idea that they had any strengths. In fact, if you told them they had strengths, they would have laughed at you. I can remember one girl in particular, who I'll call Jenny. She did a strengths test like this. And by the way, more than 11 million people have done this strengths test. So it's really highly investigated, and the statistics on it are very, very reliable. And the things that came out for her was that justice and a sense of fairness and social intelligence, they were really high on her scale. So when she went for an interview, the advice we gave her was just concentrate on your strengths. So when she was asked that inevitable question, well, why should I employ you? Why should you work here in my cafe? She said things like, because I'll always be on time. It's really important to me. I'm very reliable. I never let people down. And when she was asked about customers, she said, oh, you know, fairness is so important. Everybody needs to be treated the same. I would never differentiate between someone with a posh car and a suit and someone who could only just afford a cup of coffee. And she impressed her employers so much, she got the job. And I can tell you 6 years later, she's a manager there. So she really flourished and grew into her innate strengths that she has. I'm very concerned about the time. Do you want me just to give you that sort of overview or talk? I mean,
you can have 5 more minutes.
Yeah,
you can have 5 more minutes.
Oh, that's good. Lovely.
This is fascinating. I mean, I'd never even thought about what about things that you're good at but you don't enjoy. I mean, I think that's, and I'd never thought about the fact that if you work on your weaknesses, you just you aim for average, but if you work on your strengths, you aim for exceptional. I think that's a really interesting idea. I mean, I love it.
Yeah. So you can go from good to great is a way of saying it. So I would say to people, when you do the strengths test, if you decide to do that, and you look at the ones at the bottom, and you might be a bit disappointed that they're there, but you can't have all 24 in the first 5. So if something goes up, something has to go down. The only thing I would say don't worry about them much unless 2 or 3 of these are there. For instance, if you're not feeling that you are as happy and as content as you could be, and in your bottom set, you have things like gratitude, love and kindness, I would say they would be very well worth investigating and trying to improve. And the way you improve them is that you use them. And of course, you'll all know about how gratitude, that's just one strength, how that people that practice gratitude diaries and ways of using gratitude improve their their sense of self-worth and well-being in general.
Can I ask a question, Lesley, about this, which is, surely the best way to use these strengths would be to use them in our job if we could. But is there any way, Jerry, I can hear you. Do you want to mute yourself? I'm going to mute him. I've got the power. Is there any way that I could pick out my strengths on there, which is quite easy because half of those I definitely draw a blank on. But, and could that then tell me what job I should do? Or, you know, a person who's wondering what job to do, could they start from their strengths? Is there like a computer program or a mechanical way to tell me I should go and be a doctor or a gardener or something based on my strengths? Because that would be great if it existed.
Well, it sort of does. Let's go back to the beginning. So it would give, if you would have the luxury of choosing any job you want and you could use your strengths. I mean, for instance, going back to the Princess Trust, I worked with a young man and I asked him what his ideal job would be. And he said a dolphin trainer in Florida. Well, for a 22-year-old living on a council estate who'd been in long-term unemployment, that wasn't going to happen. But by finding out what it was about that job that attracted him, which was nature, being outside, I could hone in on his strengths, and he got a job helping out in a garden centre, which it's not in Florida training dolphins, but you know, it was still giving him some of that feeling.
Yeah.
But going back to actual jobs, very forward-thinking companies do what they call strength crafting, so that they look at people and they match their job to their strengths. And of course, in a team, you want a nice spread of strengths. So ideally, yes, choose a job that you use your strengths. As an employer, ideally, make sure that your employees are using their strengths. But for those people who are unfortunately trapped in a job that doesn't use their strengths and they're not happy, a way round the outside of this is to try and use your strengths. So for instance, I don't know if perseverance is one of your top strengths, well, try and do your job quicker or to a deadline, or bring humor into it, or whatever your strength is. Look at, you know, help people at work, do volunteer things. So it sounds, well, it's like all positive psychology, really. The easiest way to be happy, and I think Julia was talking about this, is to serve others, is to share what you know, as you're all doing in this happiness cafe, and to care for others. That's the quickest to make yourself happy. It's an external rather than an internal thing.
Yeah, and I'm assuming we shouldn't worry if we draw a blank in one of these categories. I mean, suppose hypothetically I had no temperance strengths at all, because you can't have them all, can you? Is that
of course
right
not?
To say?
When you go to the website and you look, things like perseverance tend to be commonly at the bottom for most people. Some people, though, you know, are exceptional and it's at the top. There are some that are very common that we all tend to be a bit weak in. There's just one little caveat that you can overuse a strength, and you may have seen people do this. So for instance, humour is a wonderful strength to have. Great to be around people with a sense of humour. But it's not always best to use that in the boardroom or at a funeral, for instance. So it does need to be contextual. And honesty, it can be overused, as I'm sure you can imagine. You don't always have to tell people the whole truth about their appearance or their weaknesses. So you have to moderate your strengths. Yeah. But it is, as you sort of said, it is a fascinating subject. And when you look at the science of the things that we take for granted, so we're aware of the science of gratitude, but the science of love, the science of appreciation of beauty and excellence, even that strength will look totally different from different people's perspective. For some people, for instance, so for me, appreciation of beauty and excellence is walking in the forest. But for somebody else, it might be doing a spreadsheet, or having the neatest handwriting. that, you know, for them that's excellence, or just doing a job to the best of their ability. But when you use your strengths regularly, it's you at your best. It's you being the most authentic that you can be. And people find that life is just beautiful. So I would encourage everybody to discover what their strengths are, and then look at ways of using them in novel ways. So for instance, curiosity, if that was one of your strengths, you know, you might not have a job that really gives you the opportunity to be curious, but go to work a different way, do your job a different way. You know, perhaps you can do it standing up instead of sitting down. Those are the ways you can engage your strength and get some, you know, power back into your life, even if you feel it's missing.
Right. Well, that seems like a good place to finish, Lesley, but I don't know. What do you think, Jerry? Have we got time for a couple of questions about that? Because that is fascinating.
No, I don't. I think Leslie's given us some pointers, and I'm sure she'll follow up with a link to any suitable websites. So I think we ought to carry on, because we're now.
Yes, time is getting on. Although, thank you so much, Lesley, because that's really, really interesting.
I'll put it in the chat box, the links.
Yes, VIA, isn't it? You can Google VIA.
Yeah.
And there's probably a questionnaire you can do. Although I think, as you say, we already know our strengths, but then it's like, how do we use them, and what do we do?
I think it's well worth doing. You probably might not realise your strengths. Yeah.
Yes. Brilliant. So thank you, Lesley. And we are now going to go pressing on to our third speaker of the evening. Although, don't you think, everybody, what a fascinating evening it's been so far?
It's been brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I think really, really interesting. And we're slightly over an hour, but what the hell? What else have we got to do?
Well,
nothing.
I'm enjoying it. Everybody looks happy, and no, it's a fascinating evening's entertainment and inspiration.
Yes, they can always log off and do something else if they want, can't they? But they're all still here. So, right.
And then come back.
Yes. So we have now got Rachel Moore, who, as Jerry said, is a professional singer, but also a voice coach. And she's going to talk about the link between happiness and singing. You don't want to hear me sing, although I do sometimes sing along to stuff when I'm driving my car. But I don't know whether that counts. Singing on your own, does that count? Well, we will find out. So, Julia, I can't actually find you at the moment, but when I can see where you are, tell us just maybe 10 minutes. I don't know how long you've prepared. Give us a quick outline of how we can be happier. What can we practically do, and the connection with singing?
All right, thank you. Well, I'm going to keep this very, very brief, so it's absolutely fine. But yeah, because I know obviously you've gone over time, and thanks for those who are here, and thank you for inviting me on. Yeah, so basically, in a nutshell, there are so many benefits associated with singing, and I think the sad fact is that so many people think they can't do it because they've got hang-ups often sort of from childhood, maybe some negative comments that were sort of said at the time that sort of stopped them, you know, this sort of fear of releasing the sound. But so my sort of big mission has been to try and encourage people, as many people as possible, particularly adults, to just have a go and open up the voice, because at the end of the day, singing is an extension of speaking. So I'm always saying we can speak so we can sing, and our singing voice is it's a muscle. So just like, you know, if you were going to go and run in the marathon, sign up to the London Marathon, you wouldn't sort of just sign up and then, you know, for the following day, you would work up to it. So it's the same with our voice. We can actually really sort of start to improve our sound. So that's one of the big myths about singing, that music's for everyone, singing's for everyone, we can all do it. And the sort of the main benefits, my goodness, I mean, the breathing technique alone that singers and actors use, the deep sort of belly breathing, really helps to give us a sense of well-being, because it slows our heart rate down. It can reduce our blood pressure, and just give a feeling of euphoria as well, because we're sort of getting much more oxygen into our body. So it helps with focus, all of that, which is incredible. And also when we sing, it sets off, it's literally a chemical reaction in our body, and it's been proven medically that it just increases levels of endorphins and oxytocin. The oxytocin is like the cuddle hormone that we have, and the endorphin is that sort of that feel-good factor. And that's why, you know, most people, when they do sing, they are on this natural high afterwards, which is amazing. And I've often called it, for me, I've often called it a natural antidepressant, because it's helped me in my life when I've, you know, things have been running a bit, bereavements and everything, and just singing will just take you out of that place. So yeah, it's that's one of the other huge benefits around it. And also there's a nerve in our body called the vagus nerve, without getting too medical, but it's one of the longest nerves in our body, and it connects our brain, our guts, our lungs, our heart. And it actually is a nerve that helps us to sort of rest and digest. And singing and certain things which I can just tell you now that you can do that will really help, it actually helps to stimulate the vagus nerve, and then it just helps us with that whole sort of sense of well-being. So one of the things that you can just start to do on a daily basis, even if you don't want to sound like Pavarotti singing around in your kitchen, just simply humming along to gentle humming, ums and oohs as well. That just starts to sort of, you'll feel it inside your body. It will stimulate that vagus nerve, and it automatically will then give you that sort of sense of well-being. So yeah, I mean, that's just some of the benefits. You know, there are lots of other benefits, and it sort of helps your it helps with memory, with focus, and you know, it's one of the fascinating things with remembering words. You know, sometimes I can't remember what my shopping list is to go to the supermarket, but I can remember lyrics of songs from years back. And this is why singing is such an important thing for dementia patients. You know, they can remember songs from way back, and it can trigger those lovely memories as well. Songs have got that power to really, really, really put us into another time and another place. So yeah, I'll stop there, shall I?
Yeah, I didn't realise it was actually physically connected with a nerve. I didn't know about it. I think it's linked to breathing, isn't it? And we started with Julia saying that breathing really deeply, and you breathe in so you can blow out candles on a cake, but also if you're going to sing, you have to breathe right in. So that's
exactly. So that is exactly, and in fact, what she did, that's exactly what I do with my students as well. I get into that sort of meditative state and use the deep breathing, and then you can. That's when you can sing all the long phrases. It improves the tone of your voice as well. So yeah.
And there is something to do with letting go as well, because if you're sort of shy, if you discover that you can actually sing, or even if you're just in a choir and nobody can really hear just you, you're still putting yourself out there a little bit, and it's making you a bit braver, and afterwards you think, yes, I did that. And so there's that sort of coming out of your comfort zone aspect of it as well, isn't there?
Absolutely. It has all these other definitely these sort of knock-on effects, and the choir is fantastic, and choirs, because you've then got that lovely sense of community, and singing goes right back. You know, it's our birthright. You know, people used to sing, you know, years ago around the you know, the piano in the parlor, and so that it's just a great way of bringing people together as well. Yeah,
brilliant. So that's some practical things we can do, and I like the idea of just humming along in the kitchen, because, you know, that's not too obtrusive, isn't it? My wife's not going to complain if I'm just quietly humming to myself. So I like the idea of that.
I just ask a quick question?
Go for
it.
Yeah, just a quick. If you're tone deaf like me and I can't hold a note, how do you sort of improve the quality of your singing at home? What are the tips we can
is there such a thing as tone deafness? Could Jerry learn to hold a note?
Absolutely, and I've never come across one person that's never been able to sort of like to beat that. Yeah, all you need to do, Jerry, one of the things that I would is just starting. It's a lot of it is that people just aren't we just not used to doing it, because you think you can't do it, so you don't do it. So scales, just listening to scales, and there's lots of things that you can find online, and just even like singing the main scale that everybody knows, you know, the do re mi song from the Sound of Music, yeah, do a deer, a female deer. If you can learn and perfect that, then you've got what one of the main scales that's then repeated throughout the text. So, and it's just with people that find it difficult to pitch, it's purely just, it might take a little bit longer than some other people. It's definitely doable. You've just got to take it step by step and just tune. Your brain needs to know the relationship between each of the notes, and that's it, and then once you've got that, you're away. Yeah.
Great. Well, I should look it up with a bit of research.
Yeah. So it's not a physical problem. It's just that we haven't trained ourselves and we haven't learnt it.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's, I've always said, like any muscle, it's muscle memory. So you start to, it just will then start, oh, okay, I know what to do here. And yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of the things that stop people singing is this limiting belief that they can't do it and they're going to sound awful. So you create tension in your body, and then it will then stop the vocal cords from working. It literally is like this. So you want to be nice and relaxed, and then you'll get a better sound.
Yeah. And are you missing performing live at the moment, or have you got a gig coming up that you can plug?
Yeah, I am. Yeah. So I've only had 2 since, I've got some more coming up towards Christmas, but I set up a sing-along throughout lockdown because of course a lot of choirs have stopped as well. So I'm going to be we've still got the group. It's a free Facebook group that I've got called LinkedIn Sing, and obviously anyone's welcome to join if you want to. And I just do these half-hour bursts of singing, and I do some technique at the beginning, and everyone just sings along with me, but in the privacy of their own space. So I can't hear them, nobody else can hear them. So you can start to sort of sing freely, and yeah, and as somebody said, or they can let rip with support. Yeah. Because I'm sort of giving you techniques on how to sort of make it sound better what you're producing. Yeah. So it is. I think that's the thing. I think it's so much it's just such a feel-good, uplifting thing to do. And I do teach as well a lot of people that have had, slightly, difficult paths, and as one of my clients said, that actually as well, just by singing certain songs, it helps to let the pain out, all the stuff that's in, it helps. It's a fantastic release, and so it's a great medicine. It really is in lots of ways.
And that's on Facebook, and it's called LinkedIn Sing.
LinkedIn Sing, yes, absolutely. And if anybody wants to contact me, just feel. But yes, it's a group called LinkedIn Sing. Just click to join, and I'll let you in. And I'll put my website on as well. And if anybody wants to just contact me, that's absolutely fine. Happy to chat about listening.
There it is. I'm going to stick it in the comments now. Great. Okay. Well, thank you, Rachel. That is great. Thank you. So it's 8:30. We've been our 90 minutes. We sort of originally aimed for 60, but then if we've got 3 speakers, we sort of think 90 minutes is reasonable. And thank you for zooming through that, Rachel, but it's still really worth hearing, really interesting. You've inspired me a little bit, I'm going to hum at least. And I do love singing when I'm driving my car, but I get tired really quickly. And you're right, it's a muscle, isn't it? So yes. I think I must sing all the way up the M6 next time, bellowing out something or other as I drive at 70 mph, not a mile above. Yeah, brilliant. So thank you. Thank you to you. And obviously, thank you to Lesley from just now. And although she isn't here, thank you to Julia Kim from Bhutan. She's a bit of a ledge, isn't she? A bit of a legend. So, yeah. Thank you to all our speakers. Jerry, do you want to just make a final remark? We're going to be back next month, of course. Bring your friends.
Thank you, all of that. Well, what a fascinating evening. I think we've had 3 very, very good speakers. I'm inspired with what I've heard tonight. I'm certainly going to try a bit of singing in the bath. And I'm delighted to hear about Bhutan and what makes it the happiest place in the world. I was delighted. Next month, we have Professor Isaac Prelensky, who's going to join us from the University of Miami, and he's going to be talking about mattering with a slight humour. And I'm expecting Anthony Selden to join us. He did say he would pop in at one of our future meetings. So they're on the bill for next month.
Can I just interrupt and say Isaac Prelensky, worst ever name, is the most amazing guy. You have to see him next week. He's so hilarious. He's got a really odd voice. and an incredible sense of humor. And he's just such a funny guy. So we are honored to have him. And normally he's really expensive as well, to like thousands of pounds to get him to talk at your conference. And somehow Jerry has persuaded him to come and talk to our group. So you've got to see him and bring some friends, because honestly, you'll wish that you'd had them there. You have to see Isaac next month. Yeah. Back to you, Jerry.
Okay, well, just finally then, thank you all for coming along and joining us. Please let us have your feedback. I'll drop everybody an email, but if you've got any comments and suggestions, be pleased to hear from you. I'd like to thank Chris and Julia for hosting this, and also for Paola talking about what makes Austrians happy. I think we might pursue that idea in the future and invite people to talk about their country or where they're from and what makes them special and happy in their own country. So thank you all for coming along. Our next meeting is on Tuesday, I think it is Monday, the 2nd of November. I'm reading off my crib sheet. Monday, the 2nd of November, and we look forward to seeing you all then. Good night, and God bless to you all. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Unmute and go bye.
I hope there'll be a recording of this session.
Yes, it shall be recorded. Yes.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, there's a lot to look at again there, isn't there? Bye, everyone. Bye, Lesley. Thank you again.
Thank you, Lesley. Thank you,
Bye,
Paola.
Toshiko. Bye, everybody. Bye, Rachel. Thank you. Bye, Julia.
Yeah, bye. Shasha.
Bye, Jerry. Bye.
Even
Bye,
Jerry.
everyone.
Bye, Jerry.
Chris, are you still there? See, you and me, but mate. Well done,
Cheers,
Rachel.
Stan.
Yeah. That was good.
Bye, Rachel.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. Yeah. Well, Julia, Rachel is gone. So it's Chris, Julia, Sally, and Ivor, looks of it. I think Shashank may still be there. Anyway, great session tonight. I know it went on long, but it was fascinating. Lots of interesting stuff.
Yeah, loads of good stuff. I'm going to press stop recording now.
I think people are captivated. I mean,